Well, hello and welcome to another F1 review of the weekend of the racing. We are at Japan. Now, if any of you are wondering why we didn't have a Chinese Grand Prix one, well, the Red Bull situation was so big, I felt like it needed to do a video that was on its own. No highlights to even talk about because we know that obviously there was things like the Ferrari situation with the double DNF and the disqualifications and the craziness and everything like that. So we're just jumping straight into Suzuka. I think there's a few little talking points to mention. Um, and I've highlighted three. And I feel like I've done a good job just by highlighting three. And one of them might be the reason why. But we obviously had Max Verstappen surprise everyone with pole position yesterday and end up winning the race. Lando Norris in second, Oscar Piastri in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, George Russell fifth, Kimi Antonelli in sixth, seventh Lewis Hamilton, eighth Isaac Hadjar, ninth is it Gasly, and 10th I believe was Ollie Behrman. I might be wrong. I think ninth was Albon. My bad. But anyways, that was pretty much that. So I think the big talking point is the people that weren't first to start off with, i.e., McLaren. And I feel like we need to have a real serious talk about McLaren. Ultimately, what are they doing? That might sound bizarre if you're looking at the league tables. McLaren are top of the Constructors' Championship. Lando Norris is top of the Drivers' Championship. So what's the problem? Why are we saying we need to have a serious talk? Well, they should have been way further ahead. This race, I genuinely feel like could have been McLaren's to win. But for some reason, they didn't. What was that reason? Fear is probably the best way of putting it. Scared to make a move, scared to do something. We had a situation where Oscar Piastri was the quickest guy on the track. We had a situation where Lando Norris was quick on the track. But barring a pit stop battle, there was nothing. And there could have been something. Kimi Antonelli proved to everybody there could have been something out of this. They could have extended, could have done something unusual. We had the situation with the soft tyres. Could something have been done there, right? And why is this such a big problem? Because ultimately, this is almost like a Mercedes thing. Remember the times when it was Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, or Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton? Equal drivers, let them do their thing. What's the problem? Except this is not the Mercedes situation. This is probably similar to Ferrari in 2008. I don't know if you remember that time. Ferrari with Felipe Massa, with Kimi Raikkonen, and McLaren had Lewis Hamilton and Heikki Kovalainen. Now, Heikki was a good driver, but nowhere on the levels of Lewis Hamilton. In the meantime, Ferrari had Kimi Raikkonen and Felipe Massa doing brilliant stuff. But ultimately, Ferrari couldn't work out who was going to be their main driver, who was going to win the races for them. And yes, there was controversy in the middle. People talk about Singapore. I talk about, by the way, Spa Grand Prix of that year. But that's what it feels like. Now, forgive me when I'm going to explain this comparison further, because it's going to make it sound like I think that Kimi Raikkonen is not a great driver, and he is, by the way, right? But here's a situation for McLaren. McLaren's car, excellent, top tier, fastest car on the grid. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, a brilliant driver pairing. They're not elite as such, they're not top, but that's no shame. Very few drivers get to that level, right? And you can be world champions without getting to that level, so I'm not going to hold that against them, right? We've had world champions where their driving skill is not of top standard, but they've still been world champions. But the strategy team, the race engineers, the communication, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's poor. And let's forget the situation of the pits and everything like that, because that's predicting the future. And although there's a few people that certainly did predict the future, I'm just going to talk about the communication, right? No one from McLaren was on the pit board was sort of like taking a stand. Nobody said to Lando Norris, for example, going, right, I don't care what you're saying in terms of keeping the distance to Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri's quicker than you. Let him pass. Let him do some laps to battle Verstappen. Use him to wear Verstappen's tyres down so that you've got some opportunities. You can still keep that gap. No one was saying to Oscar Piastri, conversely, yeah, you have to stay where you are. Lando Norris is going to catch. He's going to have to do it, right? But you got to stay in your lane, right? There's no firmness. No telling the drivers, right, this is what we're going to do to win the race. And you need that. It's the reason why I'm not convinced Ferrari will have a world champion, apart from the fact that Lewis Hamilton will probably be the one that puts his foot down and fights to the bitter end. Charles Leclerc too, as well, by the way, right? But there's no... What's the best way of putting it? There's no person in McLaren that I could imagine doing a Valtteri, it's James. Lewis, it's James Vowles. Shut up, basically, right? It seems crazy that there isn't a situation where Andrea Stella comes on the radio and goes, right, Lando, this is what we're going to do. I don't care about your strategy. I want to win. We want to win this race, right? Or somebody saying to, just as a senior race engineer, somebody that basically puts their stamp on things and goes, right, that's it. And I think without that, McLaren are at very high risk of bottling a one-horse race for the title. Lando and Oscar should be clear of the pack, and Oscar I'm going to give allowances to because, let's face it, he came off through bad luck. But Lando Norris shouldn't be 1 point ahead of Verstappen. And let's face it, the only time Lando's messed up was in a sprint race, which didn't cost him too much because Oscar Piastri got second and Lewis Hamilton got first. Verstappen was third. And yes, Lando Norris didn't do great, but it was a sprint, so didn't lose too much. He should not be 1 point ahead, but he is. And do you know whose fault is that? McLaren strategy. Car designers, top tier. S tier, let's say. The drivers, A tier. The strategy, probably a C. That needs sorting out, and fast. Let's talk about the other talking point. If anyone was watching the watch along, by the way, feel free to follow the channel so you can get a chance to watch alongs. Twitch.tv/ the ND Ninja. They would have heard me being hesitant about the co-commentator on Sky, and I do want to talk about this. Jacques Villeneuve. Now, I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure this was Jacques Villeneuve's first time as co-commentator. And I was nervous. Let's face it, the last time we had somebody co-commentating, it was we've had Paul DeRestas, we've had the Johnny Herberts, not the greatest, right? I'm going to start with the slight positives. Was that Jacques Villeneuve? He sort of reminds me of Nico Rosberg as a co-commentator, and what I mean by that is he doesn't just follow what Crofty is saying, right? He doesn't just like agree with everything Crofty says. But there's an art to being a broadcaster, right? I think. I've never been one, but I think, right? But the whole idea of being a broadcaster is to keep the fire going as much as you can, keep the hype going as much as you can, right? And it's a balancing act. You know, a lot of guys that have been in F1 don't know how to entertain. The best commentators of Formula One have never been in Formula One. Murray Walker, James Allen, Crofty. I do think he is a brilliant main commentator. And what is it that makes Martin Brundle so good is that he has opportunities to explain, but doesn't kill the mood. And there's a lot of times where Jacques Villeneuve just killed the mood. Crofty saying things like, "Oh, do you think?" Well, that was a little bit naughty from Max Verstappen pushing Lando Norris off. Now we all know Max Verstappen didn't push Norris off, but Jacques Villeneuve just killing the mood, going, "Well, if anything, it's an unsafe release on McLaren." Right? We want to bring the jeopardy that Max Verstappen might get a penalty. Saying that Lando Norris is going to get a penalty doesn't really build the jeopardy up that much because of the situation that we're finding ourselves in, the fact that Max Verstappen is leading the race. Other things like when they were talking, Crofty said, "Oh, do you think Lando should let Oscar Piastri pass? He is faster," and Jack was just like, I don't know, because then Lando's going to be faster." No, no, for a thousandth time, no. Kills the mood. Now, here's the thing, right? I've never fully understood the hate for Jacques Villeneuve. I know he said some dodgy things over the past few years, had some choice opinions about drivers, but let's not forget he is a very experienced driver in BAR, where he probably won the Crash Championship. I mean, obviously the 1997 World Championship victory, one of the guys to have actually beaten Michael Schumacher. And he is a brilliant racing driver. And maybe he could be a co-commentator. It takes some effort, it takes some skill, it takes some understanding. But I think right now, Jacques could use some support from Martin Brundle, some support from others. Similar to how Eddie Jordan got support from Jake Humphries. You remember the time when BBC took over, people from the UK will definitely remember this, took over Formula One. Jake Humphries, a children's TV presenter, had Eddie Jordan as his right-hand man. And Eddie Jordan basically said to him, "Look, I don't know anything about presenting, and you don't know anything about Formula One." And it told a lot. People in F1 can provide an insight to us common folk, But you almost need a common folk to be talking about Formula One to try and build the excitement. There's a reason why Crofty has held on to the reins as long as he has. There's a reason why Murray Walker held on to the reins as much as he did, despite having no F1 experience in terms of driving. Same with James Allen. Same with who was the guy that looked after ITV? You'll know the guy you mean, right? And ultimately, I think Jacques could be a good co-commentator if he learns how to keep the hype building. It's an entertainment sport automatically, right? And yes, you need to have the elements of the sport, but it needs to be mixed in together. And the best way to describe this was that almost what you need is that the main commentator is 80% entertainment or 70% entertainment and 30% sport. And then the co-commentator is 70% sport, 30% entertainment. And sadly, Jacques Villeneuve was 100% sport. Who knows? Who knows what might come of it, but a bit more experience, I'd say. It wasn't a bad first race, but it wasn't a great first race to co-commentate on. But I can't put the blame on Jacques here. And whilst I would have loved to have spoken about Yuki Tsunoda, how well he did in Red Bull, or how poorly he did, this wasn't the right race for it. And this is where I'm just going to talk about the biggest talking point. Suzuka itself. Now, here's the thing. I love a track that's got winding S curves and things like that, right? There's elements of Silverstone in this, right? In the S's, it's a great little track. We all love a figure of eight track as well. That adds some extra fun with it. But the top six stayed as they were. I think the only pass in the top 10 was Lewis Hamilton on Isaac Hadjar, and even then that happened at the start. There wasn't that much to build the excitement. Now, here's the thing. There are elements where the cars are to blame here. The cars are large, the cars are elite, and they work perfectly in perfect air, which means that when they're following each other, they don't have perfect air, so they're not doing that well. Now, the cars are being changed next year, and let's hope that does something. But I want to focus on the track, because is Suzuka the problem? And the answer is no and yes. The fact is, Suzuka is one of those tracks. It's a handling track more than anything else. I know there's 120R. I know there's the back straight. I know it does have some straights, but ultimately, with the S turns, with the hairpin, with the long banking curves, this is a handling track. And when something is a handling track like this, or like Monaco, or Imola, it works better in rain. This is, in a sense, a wet weather track, and we can't magic up wet weather, obviously, right? But you're gonna get times when it doesn't quite work out. And sadly, this was the case. Now, it wasn't the greatest advertisement for Formula One. By the way, Bahrain next week, I think, is going to be a bit more of a better advertisement. But this raises up a very complicated situation for Formula One. Because ultimately, they've always got to be thinking about the rules, right? The how the car should be designed and everything like that, and that makes sense, right? And let's face it, the FIA and F1, or especially the FIA, have been making rules that really don't matter. Well, here's a rule that does matter, because this rule is fundamental to keeping the entertainment of Formula One going. In a sense, we need to look at these tracks. And now, the simple thing is talking about the narrowness of the cars and having smaller F1 cars, which makes sense. I get that. I've seen old 90s and 2000s cars compared to the 2020 cars, and it's night and day. But in a sense, we need cars that work well in disturbed air. We need rules that work well in disturbed air. Basically, that it really doesn't matter, right? About the disturbed air. Basically, something simple. Because we could be in a situation where we see more of these. Monaco is already a write off in terms of passing. And similar with Hungary. And I'm fine with 2 races of the season where there's not much in terms of action on the track. But Suzuka was meant to be one of those exciting ones. I didn't expect it to be as dull as it was. And it has me worried that if we're not careful, the regulations could kill the entertainment of Formula One. And that's concerning. Because whilst we've had rubbish races in Formula One, it's been like 3 a season, maybe 4. We could run the risk where it ends up being almost half of the races, because we've already had it with China, we've already had it with this, and Australia. We got lucky with the rain. Let's be honest. Now I don't know what's to come, but this is a big, big talking point. And this is where I've got sympathy for FIA and Formula One, for those that really care about the sport, because this is a real challenge to get that formula right. Maybe it's something where there can be a Formula One designer that helps shape them. Someone like, maybe even a disgraced Formula One designer, someone like Patrick Head from Williams, if he's still around. Just somebody understanding this to go, right, we've already had the tyres that don't last the whole race, so it provides some excitement in terms of that. We need something that basically ends up being so good we don't need DRS anymore. And forget ground effect, forget anything like that. We need something where cars aren't as heavily reliant on clean air. I don't know what's going to become of this, and I suspect nothing. If that's the case, we do run the risk of someone dying a slow death. But let's not dwell on the negatives. This has been a difficult race. This has been certainly a lot of soul searching for teams, soul searching for drivers, soul searching necessary for the FIA as well. But we have got a couple of exciting races to come. We've got the Bahrain Grand Prix next week. We've got the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix the week after. We're going to be doing a live watch along for the Bahrain one, no doubt. And until then, guys, see you around.